Well, good morning. And this is Tuesday, March 14th. And before I get started with the math, I want to wish everyone a happy Pi Day. March 14th is celebrated by mathematicians as Pi Day because 3.14 is the representation of pi, or the relationship between the circumference of a circle and the diameter of a circle. So pi is a constant that you definitely will be using in geometry, but it's used in a number of other ways as well. And on March 14th, particularly at March 14th and 1 o'clock and 59 minutes, so 1 minute before 2 o'clock is another way of looking at it, is the time both at 1:59 in the morning and at 1:59 in the afternoon that mathematicians just love to stand up, maybe not so much in the morning, but definitely in the afternoon. Stand up and say, Happy Pi Day, because 3.14159 is the very beginnings of the representation of pi. Remember, pi has no end. It continues infinitely. And the representation on March 14th is 3.14159. That translates to everyday language as March 14th, 1:59 in the afternoon or 1:59 in the morning. So at 1:59 in the afternoon, wish each other happy Pi Day, but make sure it's okay with your teacher first. So here we go. For today, you're going to be building on the area model to include changing mixed numbers to improper fractions when multiplying mixed numbers. Why are we learning this? Well, fractions are an important life skill. We've talked about this for the last couple of weeks. You can still use a distributive property when you're multiplying mixed numbers, but it's useful to have more than one strategy. And today we're going to look at another way of multiplying mixed numbers, and then you get to decide the method you like better. So how will we know we have learned it? Well, you'll be able to change mixed numbers to improper fractions and then multiply numerators and denominators using the multiply across rule. And you'll also be able to complete the examples that you're going to be doing a little bit later in your Math Links book. So to get started, I want you to write everything down that you see here on this page. You don't need to draw the little boxes like this. Okay, what you're going to do is write these words, put your example. This is going to be the area model, so you can set that up. And then 2.5 times 3 3/4. You do not need this box. You do not need these boxes. Those are just covering the answers. And you need 2 1/2 equals. You're going to change that to an improper fraction. 3 3/4 equals. You're going to change that to an improper fraction. So take about 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. And Miss Gurley will monitor you and see if you need a little bit more time, but you need to be copying all of this down. Ready? Go. Okay, so let's take a look and see if we can make sense out of this. On A, I'm looking at the area of each smaller rectangle and then add the areas together. Well, that's the area model for multiplication. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 4 is, 2 times 3/4 is 6/4. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 4 is 4. And again, if I'm looking at 3/4 times 2, I'm going to put 2 over 1. So 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 1 is 4. Sometimes it helps just to see it written again. And now I've got 1/2, and 1/2 times 3, that's 3/2. Now I have 1/2 times 3/4. Well, remember we said the multiply across rule. 1/2 times 3/4. We've talked about this already. When you multiply fractions, you multiply numerators, and you multiply denominators. 2 times 4 is 8. And that's called the multiply across rule. So 1/2 times 3/4 is 3/8. Now what you need to do, because I need to add all these together. That's what we did with whole numbers. You add them all together. Well, I don't have all whole numbers now. I have fractions. So I have 6/4, 3/2, and 3/8. And you need to find the least common multiple for 4, 2, and 8. So if you have not done this yet, or actually, I just had you copy this down, so you don't have this yet. So I'm going to have Miss Gurley pause the video here and take about 2 minutes to add up 6/4, 3/2, and 3/8. And then we'll come back in and see what you have. Okay? Pause here and go. Okay, so when you added 6/4, 3/2, and 3/8, well, common denominator is going to be 8 for these two. This one is not going to change. Okay, 4 times 2 is 8. 6 times 2 is 12. 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 4 is 12. So I have 12 plus 12 plus 3, which is going to be 27/8 when you add up your fractions. 27/8 is an improper fraction. As a mixed number, 8 goes into 27 3 times, and 3/8 left over. So I have 6 plus 3 and 3/8 is going to equal 9 3/8. So that's the distributive property and the area model. So let's check and see what it looks like when you are using improper fractions. Well, first, 2 times 2 is 4 and 1 more is 5. So I have 5/2. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 3 is 15. So I have 15/4. So now I have 2 fractions. This one is an improper fraction, but I have 2 fractions. When you have 2 fractions, whether they are proper fractions or improper fractions, you use the multiply across rule. So I'm going to have 5/2 times 15/4. 5 times 15 is 75. 2 times 4 is 8. 75/8 is an improper fraction. 8 goes into 75 9 times. 9 times 8 is 72, and 3/8 are left over. You get the exact same answer by changing mixed numbers to an improper fraction and then using the multiply across rule, as you do using the area model and the distributive property. Okay, the answer is going to be exactly the same. The choice is, do you want to use the area model and the distributive property, or do you want to just change them to improper fractions and multiply across? Okay, so pause the video here. I want you to turn to your neighbor or with your small group and discuss both methods and decide which method you think would be the one that you would prefer to use and why. So listen to each other, discuss which one you like better and why, and you're going to have 3 minutes for this. Okay, and then after your discussion, I want you to write down your thoughts in your math notebook. Which one do you like better and why? So you're going to discuss for 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, you're going to write your statement. You'll have about 1 minute for that, and then we're going to continue. Okay, so stop, discuss, and at the end of 3 minutes, write your feelings on which method you like better. Okay, so you've got all of that done. Now, I want you to copy this down, and I did not hide any of the boxes because this is what I want to have a discussion about. Okay, so you're drawing your area model, you're setting up your left side, and you're setting up the amounts in the top, or basically you're distributing 2 1/2 and 2 1/2. Okay, you should have that pretty much written down by now. And if you're still writing, that's okay. I'm going to begin taking a look at what we're doing here. Okay, and I've got 2 times 2 is 4. Now I'm going to multiply 2 times 1/2. And again, if I'm multiplying 2 times 1/2, I'm going to multiply my numerators, 2, multiply my denominators, 2, and I get 2 halves. Now I'm going to multiply 1/2 times 2. Well, again, 2 over 1 times 1/2, and it's still going to give me 2 halves. Now I'm going to multiply 1/2 times 1/2. Well, 1/2 times 1/2, multiply a cross rule. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. And I have 1/4. And then you add everything up. But this is what I want the discussion about. 2 halves. Do I really need to find equivalent fractions for 2 and 4? Or can I look at 2 halves and realize 2 halves equals 1? 2 halves equals 1. Looks like a 7. There. So I'm going to have 1 and 1. So when I add this all up, 4 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1/4 is 6 and 1/4. Okay? So when you're doing your work, if you do get a fraction where numerator and denominator are the same, you can just rewrite that as the number 1. Okay? So now take out a sheet of binder paper. This paper is going to be turned in at the end of the period, so you need to make sure that you are putting your name at the top. And then you need your Math Links book, book 7, and turn to page 9. And you're going to use the area model or changing mixed numbers to improper fractions to complete the multiplication of the examples that you see on page 9. Remember to multiply numerators and denominators with the multiply across rule when you have your fractions. Change your mixed numbers to improper fractions. And then show all of your work. Again, this is going to be turned in at the end of the period. Look back at your notes if you need to. You may work with your group or with the person sitting next to you, but you need to have all of these examples done by the end of the period. So do not waste time. Now, if you get all of those examples done and there's still time in the period, turn your paper over and make 6 examples and then do the same thing. And make them a combination of whole numbers and fractions, mixed numbers and whole numbers, and mixed numbers and mixed numbers when you're making up your examples. And then do the same thing, work it out. If after you've done 6 examples, extra examples of your own, and you've done all of the examples on page 9 and there's still time left, then you read silently. The only talking that should be going on is discussing the math and what you think you should be doing for the math. Okay? So good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.